Hi guys, what's up? It's Charla from That Girl Cooked Healthy. So today I am so excited to share this recipe with you. It's one that is long overdue and it's highly requested. I'm going to show you how to make some gluten-free, yes, that's right, gluten-free Jamaican fried dumpling. Super soft dumpling. They're nice and fluffy, they're light, they're airy. Everything you would want in a dumpling. This recipe is also very easy and beginner friendly, and I cannot wait to make it with you, and I cannot wait for you guys to make it too. So let's get cracking. So these are the ingredients that you're going to need. As this is a gluten-free recipe, guys, I will forewarn you that it is not made the traditional way that fried dumpling is made. So you have to have an open mind for this, or this recipe just isn't for you. I also recommend to follow the recipe to the T. So everything that I recommend, I really want you guys to follow it through and don't miss anything, because if you decide to play around with the recipe and do your own way, it may not come out the same way, and you know, you're going to be disappointed and upset, and I don't want you to waste any time or money, anything like that. Let me do the work and then I'll show you guys how to make it. So the ingredients that you need is, I'm using my gluten-free flour blend, so I'm using my own. This is the one that I've made. It's on my website. If you follow me on my website, you will see that I already have this up, and I want you to use that flour. I've tried other flours and personally I prefer my own. It sounds biased, but it's just the truth. I just feel this works best for this recipe. You will need some almond milk as well. So yes, you do need some plant-based milk. Usually we'll use water, but it will not work with this recipe. It will be tasteless. I've tried it, it's nasty, it's not nice. It just does not come out right for some reason. With gluten-free flour and dumplings, you really have to know how to make it. For fried dumplings, should I say. So you also need some baking powder, some pink salt, have a small amount of raw cane sugar. You can leave that out if you want to, but I like a teeny bit of a sweet edge. Even when I'm eating it with savory stuff, I like a little bit of a sweet edge to mine. I'm also using some plant-based butter as well, and again, that is important to get the texture that you need and the flavor. And I'm also using some coconut oil as well, because coconut oil has a high smoke point. So for this recipe, because we are frying the dumpling, yes, we are frying it, we cannot air fry it, oven baked. I've tried it, it doesn't work. This is one of those recipes where frying it is going to give you the best result. You know that I'm all about health, and there are occasionally times when I'll make a recipe where I use a bit more oil than I usually do, and this is one of them. So you're going to shallow fry the dumpling, and you're going to need some coconut oil for this recipe. But I also use a small frying pan as well, so that's going to help. So this is everything that you need for the recipe. So the first thing that we need to do is to add our dry ingredients to a mixing bowl. So I'm adding my homemade gluten-free flour. I'm going to add the baking powder, the pink salt, the raw cane sugar, and then I'm going to add the butter, and I'm adding all of this to my stand mix. I'm using my stand mix for this recipe because I feel that it works, that the results are a bit smoother when you use a mixer than doing it by hand. Maybe because it's gluten-free, but having tried it both ways, I feel that the stand mix is the best thing to use for this recipe. But you can do it by hand. I just feel that you get better results using the stand mix. So once you've added the vegan butter, you're going to put this on the stand mix. Start off on low, and then we're going to gradually build up. So now that we've added the plant-based butter, we're just going to make this into a crumble. So you're going to combine the flour blend with the plant-based butter, and it's just going to form a really fine crumble. So you want to start with the lowest speed and then just gradually build it up to medium. It will take about a minute or two to get to the desired texture that we need. I'm also using my paddle attachment as well. I'm not using the dough hook for this. I'm using the paddle attachment for this. So I'm going to stop the mixer now and show you guys what the consistency should look like. And it just looks like a fineish powder mixed with the butter. So that's really what we're looking for, just a fine consistency to make sure that the butter is completely broken down. And I just use a spoon as well just to determine that, you know, there's not any big pieces of the butter left over, and it's nice and powdery and crumbly, and that's really the texture that we need before we move on to the next step. So the next thing we need to do is to add the plant-based milk. So what I like to do is just to add a small amount of it first of all, and then I get the mixer going and I add some more. So you have to be really careful with this step because you don't want to add too much of the milk at once, but you also don't want to add too little because it will be too dry. So you add it and then you start the mixer, and as you start the mix you want to just start on low and gradually build it up, but keep an eye on the mixer as well because you need to keep an eye on how much milk you'll need to add. I usually have about 1.5 cups of almond milk, but I don't use all of it. I just have that and then just add as I go along. And you want the consistency of the dough to be quite smooth, and you don't want it to be too sticky, but you don't want it to be tough as well. So it's really key. So add the milk in the spout just like I'm doing there now, and as you're doing that, keep an eye on the consistency. So I'm just going to stop the mixer because it's been going for a few minutes now, and just check to see the consistency for myself, and it looks a bit too tough still. It's not really the texture that I want just yet, so I'm gonna let it run a bit more and add a bit more of the milk. The good thing about gluten-free flour is that you are not running the risk of the dough becoming too tough, because you know, if you knead dough too much with conventional wheat flour, that whatever recipe you're making typically will come out too tough. But the good thing is, because we're using gluten-free flour, that you can leave this for example 5-10 minutes if you wanted to, and the texture will still be fluffy because you don't have to worry about the gluten breaking down. So you don't have to worry about that at all. So just let the mixer run for a few minutes and do its thing, and then just stop it again. And I'm going to stop it again now and see that it should be ready. So let's just check it one more time, and it looks like it's good to go. Yep, nice soft pliable dough that we can use, and we can work with that. So the dough didn't form into a dough ball, so I made that myself, and that is to be expected, that you're not going to form a dough ball in the mixer. That's fine. The main thing is that the texture is pliable and soft and smooth before we move on to making the dumpling. So now I'm going to show you how to shape the dumpling. So you have a giant dough ball there. So what you want to do is to pinch off about a golf ball size of the dough, and you just want to use both of your hands, use the palm of your hands to roll the dough into a ball. What I like to do is to roll it into a ball and then I slightly flatten it. That's just the way that my family make our dumplings. Some people make it in a tight ball, but we prefer to just roll it into a ball and then slightly flatten it. So you just use the palms of your hands. You also want to shape it as well, as you can see I'm doing there, just to make sure it's nice and smooth as well, and that there's not any rough spots. And then what I do is flatten it, and then I put it onto another plate, and I'm going to repeat that step. So I'm going to show you about 3 of them. You should make in total up to about 6-7 of them. So I'm going to show you about 3 of them, and then when I show you the 3, I'm going to then move on to showing you what they all look like, because it's a little bit tedious doing it on camera, and because of the way that I'm positioning myself recording, it's a little bit difficult for me to show all of them, if I'm honest. So I'll just show you about 3 of them just to get you started, so you know exactly how to do it, and then we can move on to actually frying the dumpling. So this is what the dumpling looks like before we're about to fry it. As you can see that they're nicely shaped. They have they're nicely disc shapes, and they're quite smooth, and that's really what you need to just go for, really. So now we need to preheat our frying pan, and it's really important that you preheat the frying pan and the oil before you add any of the dumplings, because that's going to compromise the texture, and also it will soak up a lot of the oil. So I'm using, like I said at the beginning, I'm using coconut oil. So I'm just melting the coconut oil, and you need enough coconut oil. I'm using a small frying pan as well, so that also helps with not deep fat frying and using too much oil. So you want enough oil so that it touches half of the lower part of the dumpling, because you're going to flip it over. So you need enough oil to cook the bottom half, and then when you flip it over, you'll need enough to accommodate for the rest of the dough that needs to cook. If you don't use enough oil, then you're going to get a raw inside. So this is the reason why I said there's an exception to the rule with this recipe. You really do need to use a little bit more oil than I would typically recommend for this. So I'm not giving a measurement of how much oil, it's just enough. And I do recommend using a small frying pan, because that's just going to create shallow frying and not deep fat frying instead. So don't be alarmed. Like I said, this is an exception to how I normally cook, but I really want to show you guys how to make gluten-free dumplings and get the best results out of it, really. So I'm just going to check that the oil is nice and hot. So I'm just hovering my hand over the frying pan, and it's good to go. And you don't want the oil to be extremely hot to the point that the dumpling will burn. You just want it to be hot. So you want your heat to really be on about medium heat, and then we're going to reduce it as we cook the dumpling, because it does take some time. You don't want to rush this process. It is a process. You do not want to rush it, because you won't cook the dumpling through thoroughly. It will just be burnt on the outside and not cooked in the inside. You'll have a raw inside, and we don't want to do that. So I'm adding the dumpling carefully. I add 3 at a time. I like to cook in batches. Again, this helps with using less oil to cook in a batch. Because I made 6, I just add 3. And I'm also basting the dumpling as well. As you can see, I'm just using a spoon, and I'm basting the top with the oil, and that helps as well with the cooking process. So when I flip it over, it already has a head start with the top being already fried. So really that's what you want to do. And you also want to tilt the pan as well, and that helps with ensuring that the inside is cooked as well. So that's pretty much how I cook the dumpling. So it's going to take several minutes now, and you want to make sure the first side is golden before you flip it over. So the first side is cooked. So what I'm going to do now is just carefully flip the dumpling over, because you see that they're nice and golden. So we want them to be nice and golden just like that before we flip them over. And I'm going to leave it for a few minutes, and then I'm going to return and show you guys how I also put it on the side as well, just to cook evenly so every part of the dumpling is cooked. So now that both sides of the dumpling are cooked, I'm also going to flip it on the side as well. That's just something that my mom and my grandmother have done, and I tend to do it as well. Even if I'm just making, gluten-free dumpling, I still do it. And I do that, and I actually rotate it, but I'm not really showing it as well on camera. I'm trying my best to show it, but I leave it for about a minute or so, and then I just rotate it around just to ensure that it's cooked through anyway. But this is also just to get more color really on the sides as best as I can, because sometimes you just can't really get that much color, because like I said, I'm not deep fat frying it, so you'll notice that the color at the sides are not really there, but it is cooked through. That's the most important thing, that it is cooked through. So you want to make sure it's cooked through. I cannot emphasize, do not rush this process, because you'll get raw dumpling, and you really just don't need to have any raw dumpling. There shouldn't be a reason why it should be raw if you followed the recipe the way that I've described it. I've tried my best to make it beginner friendly, so I really hope that it's easy. I've been making dumpling for all my life, so I know it inside out. So you want to, once it's cooked, just put the dumpling on some kitchen towel, and I've put it on a plate, and that will help to get rid of the excess oil, and move on to making the rest of them. So we're going to repeat the same steps that we did with the first batch of dumplings, and we're going to do that for the remaining dumpling. You should have enough oil. If you don't, then you'll need to add more oil before you place the dumplings in to get the oil up to temperature. So if you do need to add more, but there should be a reason why I didn't need to add any oil, so I'm using the same amount of oil to cook the remaining dumpling. And it's the same process again. You wait for the first side to cook through or fry through, and you flip it over, and once you flip it over, you wait for the other side to be cooked, and then you put it on its side. So I'm actually going to skip some of that out in the recording, so it is going to look like it happened really quickly, but it's just really to just fast track the process so you guys can see what the dumpling looks like once they're all done. But I cannot emphasize that it's a process that is slow, but the results are worth it, because who doesn't love fried dumpling? Fried dumpling are the best. So just let the process run, let it ride, and reap the benefits once you've cooked the dumpling. So this is what the dumpling looks like now that it's cooked. It is delicious, super soft and nice and light and fluffy. Eat them straight away. I recommend eating them straight away. I don't recommend reheating them. If you do, you want to make sure they're tightly wrapped and just put them in the oven for a few minutes if you do need to heat them up. But you will get the best out of them straight away. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you make the dumpling, most importantly, and I will see you on the other side.